Nekravol is an interesting level, or two interesting levels I should say. Yeah, I've always been curious as to why only Nekravol was split up into two parts. The second part seemed to follow on right after the first, starting out in the same location that finished off Nekravol Part 1, so I didn't think it was because Nekravol Part 2 was set in a completely different section of Nekravol. Also, levels like Exaltia featured two distinct locations, with the Exaltia and Hell portions of the level, and they didn't feel the need to split up that level in two parts. Well, the reason why id Software split up Nekravol was because the level was too large, and they didn't want to cut any of the set pieces out, so they expanded it into two levels instead.
Why was Nekravol split into two levels? Because it was huge. It was just a huge level, and I liked all of it so much that I didn't want to cut it. So we kept it all and decided to just divide it.
Now that is interesting, because Nekravol Parts 1 and 2 combined are among the shortest Doom Eternal levels. After watching Boundary Break's video on Doom Eternal, you will see that there's a ton of little details in Nekravol far into the background that are fully modelled and everything. There's many tiny moving parts in Nekravol Part 1 specifically, so because of those, id Software decided to split it up into two parts, even with the short length of the levels. Regardless, I feel like Nekravol Part 1 and Part 2 do a pretty good job at making themselves stand out from one another. Nekravol Part 1 looks exactly like what you would first think of when you hear the word Hell. It's all fire and brimstone, and it has a classic Hell look. In Doom, Hell has been updated and changed over the years. Doom 3 has a darker, more horrific version of Hell. I mean, it really feels like a desolate place. I love how the environment shifts and forms around you. Jesus, it's amazing. Doom 2016's Hell is a lot more stripped back than Doom 3 and Doom Eternal, and I like that it does something a little different. Most of the Hell locations in Doom 2016 look like demonic crypts than anything else. In Doom Eternal, we only visit Hell 1.5 times, if you count Nekravol as two levels obviously, and it's a heavy metal interpretation of Hell, as we've talked about. Nekravol Part 1 leans into that more, with a pit that has dead bodies trapped on the walls, a section where you're in a cage looking down at the lava and the flying demons below, etc. Nekravol Part 2 starts off with a similar classic version of Hell, but then instead of the typical fire and brimstone that we saw in Part 1, we see a strong blue color palette, and then even maker technology. I love the contrast between red and blue on display, and these soul transfer arenas might be my favorites of the Nekravol levels. Urdak being foreshadowed towards the end of Nekravol Part 2 is just awesome, and I'm so glad that this wasn't cut from the level. Overall, I would have loved to see how Nekravol would have been as one part, and how different the pacing would have felt. I imagine the pacing would feel fine, to be honest, since there are much longer levels in Doom Eternal even if you combine both Nekravol levels together. That being said, they at least made Nekravol Part 2 distinct enough with the emphasis on cooler colours and maker technology at the end, rather than just relying on the classic Hell design again like in Part 1. What do you think about the look of Hell in Doom Eternal in comparison to the other Doom games? And which Nekravol part do you like better? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you later.
What do I know? Spend a night hitchhiking, where will I go? I can fly with my eyes closed, but it get kinda hard to see, it's no surprise though. I ain't hiding, I don't know my feet when I be blind.